Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this regularly scheduled school board meeting for January 4th, 2024. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first up on our agenda, we have opportunity for public comment. I can see some members of the public here, if anyone would like to comment. It's an unusual event, but it's great to see you. All right, moving along to, do we have any board comments or committee updates?
It's just real quick again, I'll remind everybody, so the Budget Committee public hearing on both the town and the school district budgets are Monday evening, January the 8th, Town Hall Auditorium. And then the vote, get back to the right place in my notes here. The vote on those budgets will occur January the 22nd. That's when the Budget Committee will vote on both the school and town budgets. And again,
6:30.
Yep, 6:30 p.m. Town Hall Auditorium.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other updates?
Well, I'd give you an update on the Professional Development Committee, but Patty is here to talk about it, so I'm not going to repeat anything she says.
All right. With that, we'll move into reports. First off, student rep report. Sean, you have anything exciting for us?
Not much, because obviously we just came back from winter break, so no clubs other from our last meeting when I mentioned everything that people are doing for like the next couple weeks. Nothing additional is going on. All the clubs are going back into things, so I only have sports today. The boys basketball team and girls basketball team haven't played since last time I saw you guys. The boys and girls will both play tomorrow. The boys will play at 5:30, and the girls will play at 7. And the Aqua Mules have a swim meet this Sunday at UNH. The boys hockey team will play this Saturday against Dover. And the indoor track team had another meet at UNH, and the girls tied for first.
Nice.
And their next meet is this Saturday at Plymouth. And that's all I have today. Very short.
No, that's awesome. Thank you. And head right into the superintendent report.
Thank you, Gary. Just had a handful of things I wanted to mention. First off, I doing the rounds of the schools just before the holidays, I happened upon the Mike Cahill Quartet performing for the elementary school student body on the Friday before vacation. I guess that's a traditional event. You know, Representative Cahill and three of his close friends come and they perform holiday music. It was wonderful to see the kids doing that. So I just wanted to thank Representative Cahill and his band for being there. That was really cool. Second thing I wanted to mention, I meet regularly with Steve Fournier, just trying to keep in touch with the town in terms of what is going on in the town, trying to coordinate efforts. So I really appreciate Steve's openness to that. Next week, he's invited me to join a department heads meeting for the town, specifically because I had been asking about having some conversation around the master plan development, which I know we've had some conversation about, and just working together to coordinate efforts to better plan, particularly around budgets and that kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to that, and I appreciate the openness of Steve and his department heads to invite me in to that. Couple of other things, as Amy mentioned, Patty's going to be talking in her presentation about the teacher workshop days, but I did want to remind people that we do have 2 no school days in January for teacher workshops. One is January 16th, and the other one is January 23rd, and Patty will fill us all in on what's going on those days. Couple of other things, as Amy mentioned, Patty's going to be talking in her presentation about the teacher workshop days, but I did want to remind people that we do have 2 no school days in January for teacher workshops. One is January 16th, and the other one is January 23rd, and Patty will fill us all in on what's going on those days. Dan already mentioned it, but I did want to remind people of the public hearing on Monday night for the Budget Committee. That's an important public meeting where the Budget Committee officially presents the warrant, and then ultimately out of that, as Dan points out, they vote to whether they support or not the various articles of the warrant. So that is coming up. Again, that's January 8th, important event. And then really the last thing I wanted to mention, mostly because we haven't had an issue with weather yet this year, and kind of hoping we don't have any weather issues coming up. But there is a storm heading our way that looks like it's only going to mess up the weekend, but I figure it's a good opportunity to just take a minute to remind people of the process in the event there is a weather cancellation or delay. The way that works is I coordinate with the Department of Public Works. Rick Molaski and I are usually talking to each other by 4:30 in the morning to determine what the road conditions are. By 5:30 to 6 o'clock, I've made a decision on, after consulting with other superintendents and that kind of stuff, and the way messages are communicated to the town, the school district, is through Blackboard Connect. We did do a test run back in November, so if you didn't receive that test run, you might want to call your child's school and say, hey, I didn't get it, can you make sure to put me on that list? But basically what happens is I put a message out through Blackboard Connect, and it goes, there's a text message, an email, and a phone call. So it's hard to miss if you're on the list. And then obviously it's also on WMUR. So just want to mention that to people. Now that I've said it out loud, we're not going to get any snow. You watch it, so it won't be an issue. And whatever it is, it'll only mess up your Sunday. So, yeah, so anyway. And I think that is all that I have.
Yeah, it's regarding the budget hearing, it just kind of reminded the board, it says ultimately our budget, so if anyone can go on Monday and support.
What time is it at?
6:30 on Monday the 8th.
At Town Hall, right?
Yep. And support it and show our support for it. That'd be great. Okay, first up in presentations, we have Principal Corman, Program of Studies.
Good evening, everybody.
Grades coming up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Haven't seen you guys around all as well. Before you tonight is the proposed 24-25 Program of Studies, or POS as we know it in my world. I gave you guys a nice memo this year, just kind of highlighting some of the additions, and then a request to make myself and whoever else you deem appropriate available for your next policy meeting to talk more about IKF. The grad requirement for the high school did this last June. I think it's important we go back and revisit this one. It's one of those that impacts a lot of what we do here programmatically and planning-wise, and to offer some insight in that. Just kind of from a 30,000-foot view, we spent a lot of time, we streamlined it. It may not feel or look streamlined, but overall, we cut about 14 pages out of this thing, and added some visuals to make it a little bit more easy to understand from a student perspective. We added some VOG language. We included, because it was missing, our NEAS accreditation language. We asked a lot of staff to re-examine some of their actual descriptions for the courses. One I'd highlight is our statistics course. The language there completely changed. It's still stats. I love stats. Stats is stats is stats. But the language there is a little more student-friendly and more likely to draw kids into the course. Other, just to preempt what I anticipate be a question, would be the AP Physics cut. Two reasons for that. We have no one in physics actually this year. We haven't run AP Physics in a while. And when you actually go back and look at what we had been calling AP Physics, we were not actually running AP Physics. We were running a program called Project Accelerate, which was through Boston University's online programming. It's a project, was, or still is, we don't use it anymore, a project-based physics course through online offerings through BU. This is before my time, but my sentiment here would be we'd probably put kids through this online module and then encourage them to take the actual AP Physics test. So while I'm officially calling it a cut, it was not AP Physics in its traditional sense. It was a program, as I mentioned, called Project Accelerate. In the event we do have somebody who is interested in physics, I've already checked. VLAX offers AP Physics as an open enrollment year-round. So if we had a student, hypothetically, in March, get real gung-ho and want their AP Physics, we could enroll them 2 weeks later and let them start for the entire next academic year. Other than that, kind of the overview. What questions do you folks have for me?
Did you say you retired in APES environment?
No, we retired. So we ran 2 courses that were drawn from the same population: AP
okay.
Environmental Science, period, and a whole separate course called Environmental Science. And the Environmental Science
okay.
non-AP version
Yeah.
wasn't drawing kids.
Oh, okay.
Kids
So
were
now
interested-
we're just having the AP.
We're just having APES.
Okay,
yeah.
I was going to say because that's a popular class.
Very popular.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
when we looked at the enrollment data, we found kids, even those historically that signed up for environmental science 3 or 4 years ago, changed their mind and rolled back over to APES.
Okay.
So it's just a retirement of a course that really was.
I didn't pick that up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that was the second time I was seeing this, but so forgive me if this is
It's okay.
old, and I just realized it here. The career cluster sessions,
Oh.
are those
Yeah.
new, or were those there last year?
So those have existed in a linked format,
Okay.
and they, lo and behold, a lot of people don't click on links. So those have existed in a nice display in the counseling office. We found was people didn't click on links. We're going to make it really obvious and really evident. So we took the essential paper format and put it right in there and made it as flashy as we could get to really outline where those career clusters and options for kids.
So they're super helpful, right?
Oh, yeah.
They look super helpful,
Yeah.
I'm sure, like to learners.
Yes, that's, yeah.
The-
We get a lot of questions of, I'm interested in this, what do I need to take? Well, here's some thoughts.
So what about, because, maybe by the age 15, you're not quite sure what you want to be.
Yeah.
when you grow up, right? Like, what about like individuals that want to like potentially they get into a career cluster and they're like, I kind of want to try this one now. Like, they're able to
Yeah.
maneuver, right?
Yeah, totally. None of these are locked in, like sign your life away. I'm a liberal arts major. Like, no, these are wide open and more. While we're calling them clusters, I think it's more of just starting pathways. Hey, I'm interested in this. I take a step or 2 down and go, hey, this isn't my thing. By no means are you locked into any of that, and have the ability to, because of some of the work we've done around credit requirement, have that flexibility to still meet your core, but have some options and even change your mind a few times.
Can I ask a couple more? I want to.
Yeah, so as you like.
So, as made you hot.
Yeah.
Wrap yourself in.
All right, here we go.
The vision of a graduate. Oh, I'm so happy to see vision of
Yep.
a graduate in here. Have you considered how that is influencing what the program is studies? You know what I mean? Or is there a way we frame the program of studies,
Yep.
not just having it, but
Yep.
integrating it more?
I am not going to steal Patty's thunder,
Okay.
and she's going to talk about the 23rd, and maybe Todd's thunder as well. But yes, the idea of everything's going to go through that lens. You guys have heard us say that. We're really going to focus in on that. The timeliness of the POS that has to go out to get in there, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place, but I would anticipate the 25-26 version to be a little bit more favorable around VOG competencies and pieces.
One last question. In your cover letter, thank you for it, you mentioned that you'd like the policy committee to look at the graduation requirements
Yes.
again. I noticed that.
Wait till I hang out with you guys.
like
I think it's just
maybe-
an excuse to hang out with us.
I think
To be clear, though, you're talking about the actual individual requirements. We're not talking about the total number of credits
yes,
here.
sorry,
You have
we're not talking bottom line number. We're talking some of the can you tell I've stared at this chart too long? The stuff on the top of the chart. Some of the mathematical language, the science language, just clear. Not the bottom line number. We did a lot of great work on that, but maybe where things fall and the flexibility we have around some things.
Yeah, my question was just what exactly were you looking for?
Yeah, I mean,
Thanks.
just to remind everybody, the policy change we moved from, it's gradually phasing the total credit requirement to graduate down to 24. So the incoming freshman class this year is required to have 24 credits to graduate. Prior to the change, the total number was 28 and a quarter. And what we're trying to do is not to take anything away, but we're trying to create more opportunities and more choices for kids. And as Andy and his team have gone through the review of the program of studies, one of the things that you realize is we have more rigid requirements than are necessarily required by state standards. And so there's room for us to have a conversation about what are we going to require as part of the Newmarket diploma and what is required by state. So there's the state total number of credits to graduate is 20. So we're clearly 4 more already than the state requires. It's a question of exactly what are we going to offer, and it's how you structure your math requirements. What are some of the core elective experiences we want kids to have? I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, actually, that was going to be my question. Could you, I will say explain to me again, but explain to the public where those current reduction in credits are coming from?
Elective. It's all elective. We haven't touched your 3 R's, if you will, the classics.
Which are all defined by the state.
We are well within state requirements. We very strategically made the choice, as the superintendent mentioned, to slowly and strategically step down. The seniors last year, 28 and a quarter. Sean is 27 this year. Very slowly on purpose, because we wanted to do this thoughtfully and make sure that we don't upset too many apple carts and be really mindful of when and where we made changes.
And how did you decide which electives to reduce?
The students chose it. So the students, instead of having 28 and a quarter, you choose one less course, and what we found were kids were being forced into things. We heard it over and over last year. I don't have any interest in widget making, but you're forcing me into it because I need this credit. I would much rather utilize my time to do a work study or an ELO or something, but you couldn't get there under the old structure because it was so rigid. So we started to slowly reduce, and lo and behold, we're seeing things like ELOs and work studies really start to explode.
Yeah, out of the original 28 and a quarter credit requirement, 11 and a quarter of those credits were electives. So 17 of them were requirements that met the state standards. So we were asking a lot more electives of kids than necessarily they needed to have, which, by the way, doesn't mean a kid can't choose to take as many courses as they want.
Oh, yeah.
They can still do 28 and a half or 30 or however many they can squeeze into their time. It's just what you mandate and what you require creates the flexibility for kids to make choices for themselves.
Can I ask 2 questions about that? The first one is, I know the Department of Education is coming out with new rules here soon. Is there any argument to be said that we should wait until those come out before we adjust the policy, or do you feel like let's go for the policy right away?
I believe in the New Hampshire way and that the local control. So I would say let's go after that policy. Okay. And if we have to get slapped from Concord and have to go back, but every day we have kids coming in, I want to do the absolute best for them. Yeah. I think by having some conversations around where we can look at our policy, it just improves that. And I hear you on that, and probably not going to make me any friends in Concord, but that's just
my understanding of the changes of the 306 is it's actually about creating more flexibility. Okay. It's not about making more rigid requirements. So I think it's what we're doing is much more in line with the spirit of what they're trying to accomplish with that.
Okay. And this is just my personal opinion. It'd be nice to have this discussion sooner rather than later, so it could be implemented with the classes that are there now for scheduling for next year. So that
I did not know when your next your next policy meeting was, or I would have thrown it on there, but I'd be, again.
I haven't told the policy committee yet, but I have penciled it in as an agenda item on the January 25th meeting.
Awesome. Thank you. Can I ask a question about the freshman seminar? About how is that being created? Who will be teaching it?
Great question. So this is one of the things that drives us insane on a regular basis is when teachers come down and say the kid should know how to fill in the blank. You respond with, okay, did you teach them? And they go, well, it's not mine, they should have learned that. And it's one of those things that everyone thinks someone else should have done it. And at the end of the day, it's this gaping hole in experience. Part of it was COVID, part of it is lack of a lot of 612 consistency. The example I use all the time was I had a kid in my office last year who was there on a disciplinary issue, and I asked him sixth grader, asked him to open his computer and email his teachers. And in between tears, I got out of him that he had no idea how to email. And there was no doubt in my mind I was not being lied to. This was a very emotional young man who had no idea how to use this. Lo and behold, taught him how to get on there, and he had like 2,000 emails, right? So I'm like, okay, this is a skill that we as adults sometimes assume that you somehow pick up along the way, but nobody explicitly ever says, hey, this is how you use IC, this is when you should use it, this is how you use Google, this is a classroom, this is a calendar. Things that adults sometimes take advantage of, but we don't ever can't point to a spot in our curriculum that says, here's where we want to go. Jay used a lot of freshman seminar when he was at Prospect and really has been a strong force behind this because he's experienced a lot of what I was experiencing last year of how come they don't know how to do this? So the idea is to, for lack of a better term, hodgepodge, shotgun approach, a wide variety of resource allocation. How do I, where is the, who do I go to? All those things that we want to front load freshmen with. And to be clear, I also want to make this part of a 6th grade rotation, a 6th grade UA rotation, different content, different grade level. But the idea of having kids come into this space, for example, and do you know how to use EBSCO? What is EBSCO? How do I use this? This is a great resource. We have, as we know, we have some staff flexibility. I very purposely did not want to put it in a department and have department members go, oh my God, we've got a lot of flexibility with people, and I've kind of rolled, a few staff members have heard this and seen this, because we have staff members that read your packet and have come down just today and asked, hey, I'm interested in that, can I teach that? And they don't predominantly, one of them teaches predominantly seniors, and saw the writing on the wall of, hey, if we can really educate them early on, it's going to make things easier on the back end. So the who is kind of up in the air, but I'm really excited to roll this out and really fill, there's a plethora of things that we could fill that with. Primarily from my perspective, it's students' awareness of the millions of resources we have here and how to get them in touch with them.
So this might be a better question for Patty, but there's going to be a curriculum that will be created next semester over the summer.
Yeah, so we've got some ideas floating around, and we'll put it into a curriculum format. But a lot of it, again, is teacher generated of, hey, how come they don't know how to do this with students, and then having the conversation with them of, I'm sure seniors that are like, wow, I didn't know Ms. Cole had access to that.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. I wish you knew that started freshman year, even better to start your 6th grade year.
Well, I mean, can I come in real quick? Is this something that the high school, I'm assuming this is fairly easy for the high school team to communicate this to the middle school team when these things happen, but I mean, did somebody fire an email off to Sean and say, hey, by the way, we've got a 6th grader here who doesn't know how to use
Or
email?
between grade levels?
Yeah, or between, I mean,
Yeah.
are we, and maybe this is more of a question for Patty, but is that communication happening?
Yeah, so Sean and I have had that conversation. He's like, no, in his credit, he's like, no, we do address it, and talking to Jason and the tech team, they're like, no, we did go down. I would argue showing a kid something once and having it be part of a regular rotation, so changing some of that mindset. Our 6th grade team's worked on a lot of that in the fall around some behavior management stuff with kids, but adding in now, like, hey, it's Monday morning, first 10 minutes of class. Anybody get an email over the weekend? Let's be very purposeful. We bought agenda books this year for them. Let's be really purposeful. How do we use this? How do we, simple things, how do we take notes? How do we communicate? How do we direct back and forth? And weaving some VOG into that of how do we effectively communicate our needs without coming, the number of emails I get from kids that are like, they write the email in the subject line and then hit send, and I'm like, hey, hold on. I'm like, wait, what does this say? Because, Google will cut it off.
It's good, because that feedback loop seems really, really, really important.
Yes. Yeah, because if not, you're Einstein. You're going insane doing the same thing over and over.
And again, not to spoil, Patty's going to talk, we actually are looking at the vertical conversations that need to happen, and you nailed it, Dan. That's one of the topics that's going to come out of that.
I've heard freshman seminars, I've experienced freshman seminars, and they can be awesome and excellent. A lot. And it's not just about study skills and things like that, but it's also just about basic, like how you approach a teacher about having a question, advocating for yourself, being a decent human being, and things like that. Yeah, the danger is when it's not housed somewhere, it's not a set number of teachers, that when it gets tossed around, it becomes nothing.
Yeah.
But it seems like there is an effort to create something that's going to be passed from person to person, which has meat.
And my hope is that when we really create the meat of this and people dive into it, the fruits of the work are going to be evident as soon as 2nd semester rolls around. Our goal is to get every freshman locked into this at the start of the year, so you know where your resources are, and how do I ask a question? Because you're right, self-advocacy is one of those things that we see on a regular basis with kids struggling. Or how do I politely disagree with someone in class without throwing a chair or dropping some inappropriate language, right? I was in a senior class, English class, where they were openly debating really sensitive topic on both sides, and everybody remained completely civil, completely calm, and with it. And I was like, this is a society, like, can we model this out in the real world? Like, this is really impressive. And I asked the teacher, and she said, I do a lot of work up front going, sometimes it's okay to disagree, and here's some literal ways you can do it, from how do you position your body to how you use words, and I disagree with Phil, and that's okay, and here's what we're gonna say, and it versus throw like those type of things that matter, and to be explicit when and how we teach them, I think is important with kids. Anything else?
That's, there was a question, but it's gone, so maybe it'll come back.
I'll
Oh,
be here.
it's back. Sean, did you have a chance, I know you probably didn't look a ton at it, but have you looked at the policy document at all? Do you have any thoughts on it, feedback?
The one on
program
the.
study.
Oh, the program studies, excuse
Oh,
me.
program studies. I didn't, but I have something that I like with because I know we're talking about emails. Like, I know how to use obviously my Gmail, but I learned that on my own. I didn't even know what CCing. I still actually don't even know really what it is. My mom taught it to me sophomore year or something
You're
like
gonna get some
that.
carbon paper.
It used to be a piece of paper.
When I grew up.
Carbon
But
copy.
I didn't know what anything was. I know obviously the basic how to make it. I might have been taught how to format it like a professional email to a teacher, but I was never instructed on more specific details on Gmail. Infinite Campus, I learned Infinite Campus on my own. I would like it, especially in 6th grade, for just first couple weeks of school, just really zone in on key aspects that students are gonna have to use, that I've been using consistently throughout high school now. So I just feel like that's way more important. That even some classes that we're taking, this is stuff that you go into a job, if you don't format an email right on an interview, they look at that and it's I don't want that to affect me. I wish I was taught that instead of my mom having to teach me because she read one of my emails and was like, what? This is so unprofessional. Why did you say this? I don't know.
Only know the subject line. I mean,
Well, you know,
I didn't know what a subject line was until freshman year. I didn't use it at all.
Yeah, why would you?
But I do think one of the advantages to having an adopted vision of a graduate is it does lead us to having conversations about what are the sort of the enduring understandings and ideas we want kids to take away from their experience there. And you're absolutely right, Sean. There are functional life skills that are going to benefit you everywhere you go that may be more important than something that you can learn for a short time and then it doesn't stay with you. And I think that's something we wrestle with and trying to make education meaningful to kids. And I think that's the work that Andy and his team is trying to do, is to look at what's the core of what we're doing with kids and making sure it's meaningful. You know?
Yeah, I work in computer science, and more it's becoming more important to know how to look something up, because you don't need to retain how to do this function. You can just look it up the few times you have to do it and implement it, and it's it's a real different way of thinking.
Yep.
I was sending emails the equivalent of when we were going through school, how to write a check.
All right.
I've never written a check.
We'll talk to you about checks too.
Yeah.
All right, anything else for Andy?
Don't get hung up on that.
No? Cool, thank you so much.
awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, now Patty, with hopefully a little thunder left, talk about program professional development day.
I just have a lot, so I'm gonna bring a little chair as my assistant. Okay, little handouts. Just walking you through the schedule for, we have January 16th PD Day.
It's okay, we can share.
So we have 2 professional development days we're very excited about. January 16th was always on our calendar, and then January 23rd, we learned recently, as our state made the decision for our primary voting day. So I'm going to walk you through January 16th first, and the first sheet, you can tell I like color coordinated, helps visually, right? It's one of my little tricks when I was teaching my 8th graders. Anyway, okay, so we're going to start with January 16th, Newmarket Elementary School. Sean's providing a nice breakfast, a grab and go for his staff. And you're going to see the MyView training with Amy Keir. So MyView is the next literacy pilot that the K-5 teachers are embarking on. They're going to start that January 29th, so they're having a full training with our consultant from Savvis Learning. And we break it down by K2, that's our foundational reading. So it looks very different than the 3-5. So it's our K2 classroom teachers and our special educators will be with Amy. While those teachers are with Amy, the 3-5 teachers will be doing the planning piece before they get, because going through the units and they know which unit they're teaching, they're starting to map out their lessons and planning with their colleagues in their grade level for 3 to 5. They'll do that, and then they switch off, then Amy works with them to answer questions and whatnot. So they know exactly kind of like what they're looking at and how to kind of dive right in there. So if you're not a K-5 teacher or special educator, we have our Title I math tutors and our math interventionists. They're actually going to get some training from our curriculum associate friends. iReady, that's a reading diagnostic that we've been piloting because it comes with the magnetic reading program. So there's such a positive buzz about it among our classroom teachers that our math teachers said, wait, can we learn about this? We want to learn about this resource. So curriculum associates, they've been nothing short of just so just going above and beyond to help our school with whatever they need. And so I reached out and said, hey, could I do a virtual training? And Julie Armitage said, absolutely not. I live in Portland. I will just drive to Newmarket. I'm happy to meet with your math tutors and walk them through the diagnostic, the reports that they get, and so forth. So the math tutors are really excited about that. Our counseling department, K-5 at first, and they will meet with their middle school, high school colleagues. You're going to see the word developmental milestones. So our counselors, what they're doing is they're looking at the developmental milestone for each of our learners in our district by grade level. So what I mean by that is our counselors are going to articulate a document for kindergarten. Our kindergartners, our 5-year-olds. Who is a 5-year-old? What is developmentally appropriate to expect from a 5-year-old? Where are they developmentally with reading and listening and speaking and working with their peers and the social emotional as well? Where are our 5-year-olds? Then they're going to create a document for first grade, and they're going to go all the way up. So our elementary folks are doing our K-5 document. This all lends to the vision of a graduate so that when we're having discussions vertically, K-12, a 6th grade teacher can say, well, I know the developmental milestone for an 11, 12-year-old is this, so therefore 7th grade, here are your milestones of what we can expect from our 7th grade students to 8th, to 9th, to 10th, to 12th grade. So I love that when Andy talked about that freshman seminar, and I loved hearing from you, Sean, as well, your own experiences. That's what we talk about, those developmental milestones. Sometimes we get in the habit, we think kids come in knowing, and oftentimes, I remember as an administrator, or even in my role now, I'll say, they just don't come in knowing, and that's okay. That's our job, to explicitly teach those skills. Like, we can't just say to kids or expect kids to open up their agendas and write their homework down. If I'm not going to stop and give them time and say, okay, it's Monday, first thing, let's go. Here's what we think the plan is for the week for the homework. But then as a teacher, I have to give kids time to do that and not just expect they're going to do it. I don't know when they're going to do it, right? So again, just kind of stopping, slowing it down, and making those connections to developmentally, where are our students? K-12, and what are appropriate expectations to place on our students as well. So that's what our counselors are working on. Our unified arts teachers at the elementary level have really been working hard last year and again this year on some integrated unit planning. One really exciting integration was with Morgan King, our music teacher, and Nancy Miller, our PE teacher. And if you could have seen those two women in there, oh my God, they had the entire 5th grade. I was there for the 5th grade one. You could hear a pin drop. These kids were just so locked in between Morgan and Nancy. It was just really beautiful to see this connection of music and physical activity. So they're going to do more planning of those integrated units, and also they are also developing their UBD, that understanding by design of their units as well. So they're going to work there. And then you can see it's that flip-flop of K2, 3, 5. They have lunch on their own. And then Jason Carey takes it away for our elementary staff with his cybersecurity training, and then the distribution of the UB keys for that multi-factor authentication.
Well done.
I wanted to say MFA, and I was like, wait, what is that? All right, so that's our elementary school. Any questions on the 16th for our elementary teachers?
One.
Absolutely.
Are you going first?
No, I don't know. Please.
The developmental milestones.
Yes.
Are there domains against which the milestones are being met, or is it sort of open? It's like, you know what I'm saying?
I know. When I said that to Jody Callahan, so I'm trained from Responsive Classroom, if you know of that, Chip Wood, it's really his name. Anyway, so I have yardsticks, and it's developmental yardsticks, it's developmental milestones, K to 14, to age 14. That's what I have, being a middle school person. But when I talked to Jody Callahan about our director of counseling, she knew exactly what I was talking about. And so we want to look at academically, what are our expectations, but also I want to say like socially, emotionally, behaviorally, what is an appropriate expectation to place on kids? And having those conversations, because sometimes as educators, we can kind of get lost a little bit where we think, no, it's totally appropriate to expect this of kids. But then when you talk to a counselor and they'll break down, well, developmentally, let me tell you where 65% of the kids are at age 12. And then you have to kind of have those conversations. You know, and it's not to say 100%, you're always going to have kids surpassing that, kids right in the middle, and some kids might be lagging a little bit behind. So what do we do as educators to support all of our kids where they are? Right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Is there another question? Okay. All right, so that's our elementary. Gets a little fun at the middle high school. So on the 16th, another breakfast, thank you, Andy, for our staff. So Ann Hadwin is a consultant with NHLI, which is New Hampshire Learning Initiative, one of our really well sought after consultants in the state of New Hampshire. And Ann is giving a presentation to the entire middle high school staff, and I don't want to give too much of it away, but it's titled Schools of Thought, and it's really taking the staff through an activity to be reflective, and again, we're tying this in with our vision of a graduate, but getting staff to be reflective of where is their thinking now, of what they think or how they perceive school and what school is, and is there another way, another lens to look at a school and how we teach kids and how our kids, how do our kids learn? What are those learning experiences that we provide for our students, and what do they look like? And how do we assess those experiences as well? And back to those expectations, back to those milestones. So Ann is taking them through an activity. It's a pretty deep, very thoughtful activity that by the end of it, I think there's a huge amount of aha moments. There might be feelings of discomfort. And when I say that, it's, I didn't think school could look like that. Wow, I'm struggling maybe with this idea or this concept of how we educate students. And I would really argue both the 16th and the 23rd might bring up some discomfort. And discomfort is actually healthy because it means that you're learning. I'm going to put you on the spot. When you're learning something new, do you feel a little uncomfortable with it? Like you're wrestling, like, I don't know this. I don't know how I feel about this. This is new. This is new information. We're at our greatest tip of learning there. You're going to feel that in college all the time, like, but it's good. If you want to hold on to that, that means like, my brain is growing. Like, I am learning right now. Well, sometimes for adults, that's really hard because sometimes we can get stuck in what we think and what we know. And so when we're presented with new ideas, new ways of learning, new ways of teaching, it might make us feel uncomfortable. And that's okay. So our message is, it's okay. You're going to sit with discomfort. And it's okay to sit with discomfort. And it's okay because the next day we're going to talk about this again. You're going to learn this again. It's going to go deeper. You're going to start to understand it and synthesize that information. So that schools of thought might make some people feel a little bit uncomfortable. And that's okay. It's also okay. One of our norms is to stay engaged. I'll tell you our 4 norms. Stay engaged, assume positive intent, sit with discomfort, and expect, or what do I say? Accept that there is, we won't find all the answers. What is it? We won't find closure to everything in one day. We can't. Like, we're not done. The learning keeps happening. So as a result of, after Ann's activity, then Andy, as a result of his NEAS group, the subcommittees turned into think tanks, and one of the think tanks is the grading think tank. And again, this is out of the vision of the graduate as well. And the grading committee sent a survey to all of the staff with various questions of how do they grade? What's their point system? Is it 100 points, 75, 50? Are you formative, summative? Are you, when I say 50-50, 50% formative, 50 summative, formative, like think quiz, summative, assessment, test, unit test? Are you 80-20, 80 summative, 20, you know, we're kind of all over the place. And we did this for a reason, because we need to find out where are we. So the grading committee is going to be showing the survey results to the entire staff. When you talk about grading as educators, and Andrew can probably attest to this, it's a pretty an emotionally charged conversation. And that's okay. It's okay, you know, and you believe and you hold on to and you feel of how you grade is the right way of grading. And again, we're going to go back to we're going to feel a little uncomfortable because we're going to learn of other ideas of what constitutes a grade. So the grading committee is going to put that out there. I developed a template. It's called, I didn't really develop it. I took it from SRI, but just a notice and wonders. And so it's very safe in terms of I'm going to look at this data, and teachers are going to write down what do you notice, or I wrote what do you observe about the data, and then what questions do you have as a result of that. They're going to talk about in their table groups about what do they observe, and what questions do you have about this. And then we'll share out a little bit, and then following that, there's a video, if you've ever heard of Rick Wormling. Have you ever heard of Rick Wormling? He's one of, he's a national presenter. Have you ever seen him, Andrew?
Yeah.
Think like, he looks like Steve Martin, like all I can say. You know, who's you're
Another
Steve
thing
is
you
on
have to
Saturday
explain,
Night.
Sean.
Crazy guy.
Strong on trains, planes, and on.
Okay, there you go. That's it. You got the right guy.
Okay,
Got
all
the
right,
right
well,
guy.
anyway, he
You
looks
really
just
wanna
like
see
him.
the joke.
And he's actually,
Oh, I saw the scene where he like grabs everything and throws it.
The new phone books are in. The new phone books are in. That's my favorite line. Anyway.
well, anyway, Rick Wormley, just super, I've seen him many times, super engaging educator, former educator, and he uses a lot of self-deprecating humor, and he's a funny guy. And teachers are drawn to him, and his message is very powerful. And again, he's not going to tell you what to do, but he's going to make you think about what constitutes a grade. And again, his whole video is on grading, so we're going to show that. Tables will then talk again about like their notice and wonder sheet, what they just heard in this message. We're thinking, and then they're going to go into breakout groups. And we're still doing the magic of in groups, but they're going to go into probably groups of maybe 8 to 10 teachers per group, facilitated by the coordinators. And then from there, they're going to read a text, I call it a text-based article. It's Tom Guskey's article, Breaking Up the Grade. If you've heard of Guskey, he's standards-based grading. But he, again, and I want to say he's a professor out of University of Kentucky. But again, he makes you actually think, too, about how we grade students. And his article talks about multiple points of data make up a grade, not just one. And so when we look at how we're assessing students, what are we looking at? When how we're reporting out on what students know are able to do, and is it fair just to give one grade to one student when there are multiple grades that can demonstrate what the student knows and is able to do? So again, it's just might be feelings of discomfort as well, you know, of reading this. I'm happy to share I can email them to you. I have them up, you guys want them. So anyway, so that will elicit a lot of discussion. I am, if you've ever heard of the School Reform Initiative, I've been trained as a facilitator with them, and we rely on protocols. And the reason why we use a protocol when we're having a deep conversation, a very important conversation, it's so that everyone's voice is heard in the room. And I've done protocols with my 8th grade students before, because it gives a chance for everyone's voice to be heard, and that's so important. because sometimes we know we're in groups, sometimes one voice can take up the room. And so when you have norms, that we're adhering to norms that we've agreed to, and then we have a protocol and we have a teacher facilitating that, we're following the rules of the protocol so that everyone's voice is heard in a very respectful manner. Because like I said, talking about grading can be an emotionally charged subject, so it's important that we're following ways and how we have conversations with each other to hear each other's viewpoints. So there will be a lot of great discussion where the protocol that we're using is the 4 A's, where as I'm reading, teachers are actively reading, so highlighting or putting sticky notes, and the 4 A's are, as I read, what assumptions is this author making? What do I want to argue as I'm reading? What do I agree with as I'm reading? And what do I aspire to as I'm reading this text? And so then the facilitators will be sharing all the teachers' feedback. All that then goes down to the cafeteria at the end of the day. We do my favorite activity, which is a gallery walk. And teachers are, I think we're only getting them about 3 or 4 circles. So we're gonna have circles everywhere. But basically you quietly, because you think you're in a gallery, right? So you're quietly going through and you're reading the A's from all of the groups, and you're putting a sticker next to what comments are resonating with you. Because this is the data that we talk about that needs to go back to the grading committee. Where are we? What do we need? What is coming out of this? Because that informs the professional development, the trajectory, where we're going. Where are we in line with our vision of a graduate? What are we saying about grading? So that's the middle high school, the 60. Sorry, I'll go faster. I know. I get excited about it. Okay. Okay, the next one is the 23rd. And we're really thrilled that we're going to be welcoming Justin McKinney, our local comedian, to kind of kick off the day, or the morning I should say, which will be some nice lighthearted humor to get us going. And I've seen Justin perform once at a school, and he's super entertaining. And then we're going to follow, poor Todd's following after Justin. He's really excited about that.
It's probably poor planning on my part to put a professional comedian in front of me, and then I get to talk about it. Anyway,
that's okay.
That's the way it goes.
You're fine.
So basically, yeah, so Todd's just going to kick off the day because this is our vision of a graduate, really focus of how the vision of the graduate, how is that informing meaningful work that we do going forward? Because there's so much, and you have to take it in small increments and steps so that it is meaningful, and really making connections to where we are now with the graduate is that we've developed school improvement plans, and we will be doing one at the elementary school, creating that MTSS structure, and then really providing multiple opportunities to improve as a school community. And then Todd's just going to be showing of how will we achieve our vision of a graduate, and then what actions will be aligned to our vision of a graduate. So it's kind of sharing of that future, where we're going, so that everything that we do in our school, it's because of what we said we're dedicating to our students, our vision of a graduate. Everything that we do, it has to go back to our vision for our students. So it's kind of putting all those pieces together. And then after that, this is a biggie where we're actually forming pre-K to 12 groups by content area. So math, science, ELA, social studies, so music even, elementary, middle, high school. So each group will be together. Paraprofessionals are also with us on the 23rd, so they will also be assigned to groups as well throughout. And they're going to be doing, being engaged. Again, we'll have norms, and they're all going to be engaged in 2 things. First, they're going to be reading. It's a short article. Why we're talking about vertical coherence, and so the article is, what is vertical coherence, and why does it matter for equity? And it's really putting together all the pieces of why we need to have vertical alignment pre-K all the way up to 12. Each one of us is so important to each other and our students' growth. And there's a protocol that I'm using with that one, and that protocol is called text rendering. It's here somewhere. And that particular protocol, this is one of my favorites. As you're reading, you highlight a sentence that just kind of speaks to you, then you highlight a phrase, and you highlight a word. every time I plan professional development, or at least big PD days, which I really love doing, I go back to myself as a classroom teacher, and I always like to model how we give professional development to staff can be very similar to what we do with our students. So these protocols, I used to do them with my 8th graders, with an article, with a reading, and we model to kids, how do we talk with each other about to making meaning when we read? So I'm hopeful that, I share that same message, that everything that we work with the teachers on PD days, that they can bring it right to their classroom the next day, right down to 1st or 2nd grade, that you can alter that. Anyway, and then after that, when they follow that protocol and they share, I then have discussion questions for that vertical alignment for each department that will be facilitated by both a middle, high school, and an elementary teacher. So we're going to have co-facilitators to support this discussion. So I have specific questions that I'm asking, and then the 3rd column are needs. So we've talked about this question, what do we need? And we need the teachers to tell us, what do they need, so that we can provide that and start planning for that. And that's 23rd. Okay, questions? 23rd, yes.
First of all, congratulations on spelling Justin's name correctly.
O-N.
If you spell it with an I, you get your own slide in his end-of-year comedy review PowerPoint. So
Nice. Okay.
Good job, sir.
Thank you. Yes.
We don't want to be there.
No.
The grading think tank, just help me understand. So, what is the goal? What is the end product we want out of that?
We want consistency.
Well,
I'm going to look at Andy as well.
Is the goal, so you mentioned this kind of, you get some extremes. Some are 20% summative, 80% formative, some are 80-20. Yeah. Is the goal maybe not globally across all the subjects, but within subjects vertically to...
So for example, let's say 6th grade, there should be common. 7th grade, we should have common expectations on how, let's say homework. Is homework graded? Is homework meant to be practice what I learned in classroom that day? Or is it meant as a grade that goes in the grade book? Are we common? Because it should be common, right? It's not fair. It's confusing to kids, right? If they go in one class, it's this way, in the same grade, and then another class, it's another way, and it's very confusing. And so it shouldn't have to be.
Not just the kids.
Right.
Yeah. So and then we need to have conversations about, okay, again, baby steps. We need to develop some commonality about that point system. What constitutes that? So that's what the grading thing can help out.
Yeah.
Misspeaking there.
No, you're...
Because we have to start with just commonalities, low level, before we move into anything big.
Yeah, and it's that idea of 6th grade expectation, and how does 6th grade, the expectation there transition to 7th and 8th, and the expectations on a senior, and about our English department, I've been picking on them all day, English department having an understanding of what a 6th grade quote-unquote essay looks like, and how do we build that to an 8th grade product versus a 10th grade in senior year, and having some of those conversations around, okay, how do we grade this? It's confusing to a kid, it's really confusing to a parent, really confusing to the boss when I look at kids' grades and I'm like, what am I looking at? How do I even help this kid? And rather than just administratively dictate and throw the hammer down and say, this is what we're going to do. Because it doesn't work. I get hit by a bus tomorrow, the new guy comes in and says, no, we're going to do something different. Bring teachers to the table. It was completely voluntary. It's our biggest group. We've got 13 teachers representing every discipline across every grade level to have the conversation. You want passionate teachers about something? Grading's the first thing to throw out there. And they are in lockstep on things that you would suspect, and they are all over the place on other things. And they're really interested to have the conversation. Nate Groth, who kind of spearheaded some of the VOG work with Anne Marie, is on this, and he is very interested, saying, okay, how willing, because the charge I gave them was, April break-ish, come to me with recommendations. Come to me with suggestions where you want to go with this. And he's like, is there anything not on the table? And I said, well, once you come back with, we want to grade on a Crayola system where everyone gets a color. As long as we don't do that, he goes, but everything else, I go, yeah, let's have some conversations. Staff-generated, meaningful. How do we assess what we're assessing? How do we know what a grade means and start to get there? Low level, easy, big fruit, up to the highest. And we're starting that process again, teacher-driven, which I think is really important, and to allow them time and space, especially on the 16th, to have
Yeah.
these conversations.
And then with a teacher-driven, I don't think it's, well, we don't think it's fair to give a committee a huge responsibility for what do we believe. And I think it is always, I'm all about, well, what does research tell us? What do we know? And in going to the experts nationally out in the field, and that's what these readings are about. Because if we just went on, well, we think this is right, and this is what I do, well, let's do some heavy reading, some lifting of that.
It's a really exciting idea, and I love the fact you're getting everybody involved because it creates passion, which creates consistency and engagement.
Yes.
How do you create, which hopefully creates culture?
Yes.
How do you continue that so that next year and the year after that, teachers leave, new teachers come in, people understand why we're grading that way and want to embrace it and continue the continuity?
I think it has to be woven into the fabric of your culture, quite honestly, of how we do things here in Newmarket. But I will be honest, grading's going to take a couple of years. This doesn't happen overnight. This is having parent forums, because parents need to understand, like you said, Dan, right? So, if we're shifting and moving and into this, and we know our vision of a graduate, I mean, even if we talk about like standards alignment and competency-based learning, what does that look like? What does that mean? How do you grade that? So this is all, like, we need to be very transparent with our whole community. So this isn't just the grading think tank. It's so much bigger than that.
I mean, even something as cut and dried as mathematics, where, I mean, not only is the answer kind of black and white, and we have a common curriculum that we use all the way up through Algebra 2, you would still be amazed at
Yeah.
the variation from one
Yeah.
year to the next in grading, and it can be.
You're right.
Well, think
confusing.
about when someone has a two-part problem and they get the first part wrong, but they do everything right in the
They
second
should
half
be
with
given
the
some
wrong
points
data.
for that. Yeah.
They should be.
exactly. And
And it should
that's
be
those
consistent
common
from test to test
discussions
and from
Yeah.
teacher
when
to
you
teacher.
have them around the table and we say, well, what is fair and just? If it's a two-part problem and the student got half of it right, wouldn't they get half
Not
credit?
that that happened to anyone related to me.
Yeah.
No, of course not. But I mean, those are
Hypothetically.
good conversations to have.
But in addition, I love the idea of weaving it into the culture as much as we can. My other suggestion would just be write it down.
Oh, well, it would become part of the
Well,
vehicle. Yes,
if
I'm sorry,
You
yes.
know, if
The
I-
what, but the why.
Yeah.
If I could also just weigh in, I do think one of the things that the Newmarket educational culture has done extremely well in the last 3 to 5 years is there's been a lot of high-quality professional development
Yes.
opportunities offered to people. You've got a half a dozen or more teachers that have master's degrees in competency-based education. You've got people who've spent endless time on UDL. You have people who've spent tons of time on UBD curriculum. But what that has created is there's pockets of a lot of things happening, but not in a consistent fashion. And so it was very obvious as we went through the process of sort of reviewing the vision of a graduate and trying to coming to some common agreements that it was easy in some ways to get to the broad philosophical perspective, but when it came down to the nuts and bolts of what really was going to drive this, that was our challenge. And I think what we're trying to do is to bring all these diverse people with great thoughts and ideas together to the table, work it through, and eventually get to a place where you have a system. Because ultimately you are, and I know that sounds very cold and uncaring to have a system, but a system of grading is the fairest thing,
important,
is
yes.
that the standards do not change based on the teacher you have or the experience. You develop that understanding that's the way grades
I
are
disagree.
developed.
Systems don't have to be cold and uncaring. They have to be purposeful
Yes.
and structured in such a way that they help kids. I don't think there's anything cold or uncaring about that.
I think, I think
But using the term system, people often
Who does that
react
once
to
a
Yeah.
meeting? Don't give it back.
I'm gonna throw it at you.
Before
Thank you.
I guess I'm always very excited when you present. And I always get very excited when I see this. Your energy is very.
I think first thing in the morning gets you going. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So-
I was always excited when teachers like we didn't have enough stuff. I'm like, oh, I'll go in. I'll see it.
I've heard stories about Valedictorian coming down to 100%, And what is that 100% of a GPA? What is that? Is that a missed assignment? And that valedictorian, for some people, could, you know, give them an opportunity for a scholarship or an opportunity to go to a higher level school. And I really applaud you for tackling this, and I think it is so important.
It's big. Like, it is big.
And-
This is messy work. You just have to be okay with it.
Yeah, and-
To wrestle with the uncomfortable.
And I know that you guys see this in a much different vision than I am, but I would think at some point it might be a good idea to pull in a board member and a parent with a committee and set this into policy, so there is no argument when administration changes or things like that, because that's kind of the wheels fall off the bus. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly any fundamental change to grading systems would come
Oh,
to you.
yes.
That's your
Absolutely.
that's your bailiwick to ultimately say
to
that's
improve.
what you want. So what we're talking about at this point is a philosophical
Yes.
look at what are we looking at when we are assessing
When we're
learning,
grading.
and then I think the part that ultimately ends up here is reporting the learning. Like, how are we reporting it? And I think that's where you get into
Yeah.
what's a 90, what's a you know, what does this mean?
I have been looking at the Crayola grading system recently. So
Oh, you like that? Okay.
we have been on this for a while. Is there any last quick questions?
Not on, I won't restate all the stuff that I agree with here. That you could spend, like, as vertical alignment, you could spend both these days on vertical alignment, still not get that
Exactly.
there, dude.
We're
But
just
like,
touching
I'm
it. We're
so
starting.
excited
We're
to
starting
see that when I think about a child's learning journey through the system.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for your work and your passion and coming in and staying late with us. So. All right. Next up, we have the draft of the final version of the draft warrant.
Yeah, there really isn't much to say about the last meeting. Obviously, you guys went through it and you made a couple of changes. This is the version that came out of that meeting, and it's the one that, unless you tell me otherwise, I'll be giving to the budget committee for the public hearing on Monday night.
Hopefully everyone's looked at that. Are there any thoughts, concerns, questions? Excellent. And there's also a copy of the SST four-year agreement that we've signed within the presentation.
And just wanted to share it with you because we did sign it. It's part of the new state requirements that we went from having 20-year agreements on career tech to 4-year agreements. So this is our first 4-year agreement with SST.
All right. Brings us into discussion items. I have not received any correspondence. Is it any members of the board? Superintendent?
Well, I did receive some correspondence from some community members that are here tonight on raising some concerns about athletic policies and wanting to have a conversation about that. And certainly we're hoping that next week to sit together and have a conversation about what that means.
Thank you. I actually did receive correspondence as well since I was CC'd on it. So thank you for correcting me. Yeah, exactly. And the next discussion item, last meeting we talked about superintendent evaluation, and now we wanted to kick that off. Was it 2 meetings ago? Bill's looking quizzically.
No, I was just wondering about the correspondence.
Yeah,
You got a
could,
copy of it.
I know, could
No
we
idea
get
what you got.
CC'd on that?
Yep.
Yeah, it was just a question about athletic policies, but sure.
Yeah.
We're basically
42.
looking for the documents that basically show our athletic policies and so
Oh,
forth,
okay.
the athletic handbooks and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah, but absolutely, we can give it to you.
thank you.
So during that meeting, we all agreed that we wanted to implement the policy once it's finalized, but that it probably won't be done necessarily early enough for us to have some sort of evaluation before the end of this board's
Policy
term.
is written as the R document.
Right.
It's
So
not-
I'd say, thank you, the other document.
Yeah.
Supporting the policy, but, so I think last meeting we talked about, and I concurred with Andrew earlier, if you want to discuss it, but.
Yeah, so just basically refresh the policy we agreed to last meeting was that evaluation would basically consist of that after the school board's goals were set, the superintendent set their goals aligned with it. We would meet periodically throughout the year to kind of verbally discuss progress on those goals. And then at the end of the year, or before the election in March, the existing school board would then develop a written evaluation based on those 4 indicators that are there. The kind of the issue that we're in right now is obviously we didn't create a system for those goals to be set. So we can't necessarily assess on that. And then the 4 indicators that we have, which I'm sure, Phil and Todd and I are have a pretty common idea what they are. You don't have in our document to communicate with you with what those are yet. When we do a superintendent evaluation, we'll have a better idea of what they are, because our document will exist. We discuss it here at the end of the month. And the question now is those, I think Todd would like time to write up some sort of written thing to share with us before we do the evaluation that is then agreed upon. Is that kind of what we agreed on?
Yeah, I think it's important that we start implementing the policy, even if we don't have necessarily the supporting document, and can't necessarily, it's not fair to ask him to do superintendent goals maybe in the next 2 months. So
Okay.
I think what we agreed to, is if we can, when you and I talked, if we can use what will be the proposed indicators or criteria,
Yeah.
if we can just kind of agree to that, then Todd can write up a document, and then we can all provide feedback on it in this.
And I feel like that's consistent
Yeah.
with the policy as
Absolutely.
redrafted.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? I mean, because I've already started sort of penning my thoughts on, because I assumed that's where we were going with this. I think it would be reasonable for our next meeting, if we want to just have a non-public, I could have a draft of a narrative to give to you, and then we could have a conversation about it, and maybe that might help flesh out some of these issues and talk it through. Because the way the policy is written, it assumes the written evaluation is done by March 1st. So gives about a little less than 2 months.
Right.
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
Is everyone comfortable doing that this first go round, getting us into the habit? Awesome.
And just for the 3 members that have a term continue on into next year, there are specific dates in the policy to hopefully hold us to something as opposed to what's happened in the past.
Thank you very much. We do actually have another section on the agenda for public comment, so I'll officially open the floor.
The only people left.
To anyone who's left at 6:22.
It's odd to have an audience.
It is exciting. May do it a few more times. And then seeing no movement, we'll go ahead and close the floor at 6:22, just to formally do that. Then we'll head into action items. First off, I'd seek a motion to approve the public and non-public minutes of our December 21st, 2023 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Phil, second by Dan. Are there any discussion items?
Yeah, one. Let me get back to the right page here. When we reordered, this is bottom of page 4, last paragraph. When we reordered and changed Articles 4 and 5, this is correct on the warrant, but in the minutes, just to say that we increased Article 4 to 75,000, not by 75,000.
Yeah.
And ditto for Article 5 to 50,000,
Yeah.
not by 50,000.
That's confusing.
It's also correct in the action items. It's just this one spot.
Yeah. That's all. That's all I had.
Anyone else have any discussion?
So I would say, but it was not actually increased the value to 50K. It was, that value was 50K originally. We increased it 175K and remained the other one at 50K.
Maybe you'd be better to say set the
Set.
set
That's-
instead of
that's
Right,
increase or
yeah.
determine.
Yep, definitely.
I embrace your friendly amendment.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next up, we have manifest.
Oh,
I'm just fortunate enough to have that.
I make a motion to approve the manifest for the week of January 4th, 2024 for the amount of $515,000 and $156.84.
So moved.
Second
I'll
by,
sec-
give that to Amy.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Passes. We have some donations to acknowledge.
Yes, we received 2 very generous anonymous donations, one in the amount of $1,000, which by policy, I can accept. The other one was in the amount of $1,250 to go to the junior senior high school's principal's discretionary fund, so the board would need to approve that $1,250 donation. And thank you to the anonymous donors.
So I'd seek a motion to approve the $1,250 donation to the principal discretionary fund.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Amy, second by Dan. Any discussion? Just as always, thanks for your generosity. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And we do have one personnel matter. Someone who's on maternity leave and like to extend their unpaid leave. It's on page 80 of the document. You can go into non-public if anyone has any questions or wants to discuss it. No? All right, I'd seek a motion to approve the extension of the unpaid leave.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Amy, second by Bill. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And we do not need a non-public tonight.
That's
I know.
crazy.
Sorry to disappoint.
I would like to sit here for another
Must be
5
a
minutes.
mime
so we
doing
can-
it.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry, there was another friendly amendment to the minutes. The vote on the adjournment was not included. I think just
Okay.
5-0 on the public minutes.
Okay.
Speaking of which, I'd seek a motion to adjourn.
Oh, moved.
Second.
Bill, second by Dan. All in favor, please say aye.
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 With that, we are adjourned at 6:26 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah, pay for it. Some people-
Yes, I know.
Don't need.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for coming.